Welcome to another edition of the Behind the Badge podcast. And when we announce today's guests, they will be truly dancing in the streets of Total Network Solutions. I had to say it. It's a tick of my journalist career saying that one. The famous line that really immortalised today's guests. They are, of course, the 15 times Welsh champions, the 9 times Welsh Cup winners. And I'm going to give it a mention because it's a tournament I regularly attended. They've also got a Shropshire Senior Cup to their name, amongst a plethora of other honours. Today, we are joined by the New Saints, and we have Chairman Mike Harris on the show. Firstly, before we get into it, I'll introduce my co-host, delivering an unrivaled insight into the commercial world of football via a melodic Midlands accent. George Harborne, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very good, mate. That's probably the best introduction you've ever given, Joe. The energy was insane. Thank you very much, mate.
You think so?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really excited for today's episode. It's a really unique team. I'm not sure, not many clubs have an origin story and a background as unique as this, and it brings me nicely onto our guest. We've got the chairman as well. You know, we've gone to the very top of the ladder. So, Mike, how are things? Mike Harris.
Hi, things are good, and we are quite a unique club. It's great to be on your show, and you let me know. You can ask any question you want. I can probably give you an answer. You may not always like what I say.
Well, brilliant. I'm going to start, before we get into your background, I'm going to start with that line from Soccer Saturday. That line that was delivered every week, is most weeks you did take the lead on a Saturday at 2:30 p.m. by Jeff Stelling, the great voice, the voice synonymous with Saturday football for many. How much did that transcend, and how did you utilize that line? Was it cool to be involved in such an iconic sporting piece of punditry?
Absolutely, because obviously, as you're aware, but mainstream soccer and sporting media had does still have to a degree a great tendency to ignore the Welsh Premier and the whole pyramid system of Wales. I think a lot of money has been spent on the English pyramid, and that they've had a lot of expensive rights, and it's a little bit as though they don't want this to kick off. Same with Irish leagues to a certain extent. Football in Britain seems to mainly contest of the English Premier League and a little bit of Scotland, and the rest is to be ignored in the great unwashed. So it was really good when Jeff had picked up on it, and I think that he used in its first version was with Raith Rovers, which I remember being at the Coca-Cola Cup final in Scotland when they beat Celtic. They said they'll be dancing in the streets of Raith tonight. And to this day, I don't think there is a place called Raith. It's in Kilkenny, I believe.
That's brilliant. And I can tell you're extremely passionate about the Welsh game, extremely passionate about your club as well. Where did your background in the sports industry start?
Well, in terms of sport, I've always been a follower of sport. I've been probably a pretty poor footballer. I'm a keen badminton player, keen dart player. I've always been interested in competitive sport, whether or not it's clubman level or very poor amateur. I've always been, competitiveness has been in my blood. So sport was there from a child all the way through into adulthood, and I still try and occasionally have a little run around on the pitch on Christmas kick around. So it's always been there. In terms of business, I remember being in Cardiff to watch a Wales rugby game, and albeit I'm Welsh, I live in Wales. Our television service is provided by the Midlands in the good old days of terrestrial TV. And on the day of the game, there on BBC Wales, I see in the hotel, I'm looking at this football pitch. I'm going, hang on, what's this? And to my amazement, I thought I recognised that pitch. I'd played on there, and they were doing a little bit of coverage of what is today the Welsh Premier. It was, I think, a game being played at Welshpool against Caerseus, and I'm thinking, so how come that's on the telly? And then I thought, hang on, this could be a good branding idea, because if you had a football club called your company name, then in the results roundup at 5 o'clock, well, you're going to get what might be free brand awareness. And that sort of sunk in my brain for a few years. And the opportunity to get involved with Lance and Fried came around. And it relit that idea. And I thought, well, that's where the idea came from, changing the name to my business from the village name.
Well, I think you've teed us up beautifully there to, for my first question of the session, which is about that deal, the way it came about, the benefits that you found as a company, but I guess also the benefit to the club as well. And I'm really interested to hear, like, was there any initial backlash? What was the feedback from the community? Did they feel like, what's this corporate entity taking over our club? Give us a sense of some of those things.
Let's get the gauge of where we were. Samson Fried started in the Amateur League in 1957. They worked their way through the pyramid system, no help from myself, and ended up in the Welsh Premier. And they came to us after they had that historical win against Barry Town, where they won the Welsh Cup on a penalty shootout. The last game, competitive game of football played in the not the Millennium Stadium, it was the Cardiff Arms Park back in the day. So when they came to me with a shirt sponsorship opportunity, I said, "Wait, look, our business was also relatively small in comparison to big communications companies. We were probably a company of 10 million turnover, but at the very forefront of the industry, just starting to build the internet out, and people didn't really know what network communications was then. Is that something to do with computing?" Would be the sort of word you would get. So we wanted to try and get our name recognized. We didn't have massive budgets to do it on mainline TV, and we thought, well, okay, well, let's see if a name changing potential could come around. So we did the shirt sponsorship. Didn't really do a great amount for us in terms of getting a national coverage. It did very well locally because of the local papers and press cover the games very, very well. But at the end of the first year, and we'd become very, very friendly with the likes of Mike Hughes, who's sadly not with us, Edgar Jones, who again sadly is not with us today, and the existing board. And they said, "Hey guys, will you do it again next year?" And I said, "Well, look, we had a lovely season, but shirt sponsorship for 1 year. You had your World Cup win, but for us, it's really not really achieving anything." But I said, "If you change your name to our company name, well, that's a whole different prospect." I at the time hadn't got anything in my mind what it would look like, and obviously they went away and said, "Well, we'll have a think about it." I thought I'd never hear from them ever again. About 2 hours later, I had a phone call from Mike Hughes saying, "Well, come on, man, tell us what the deal is." So it was basically, we offered them £250,000 over a 5-year period to change their name. And if you look at the budget of the day, I think at the time, their total budget and turnover for the year was £40,000.
Wow. So it's a significant commercial deal.
It was a significant commercial deal for them. But the club, to get the success that they had in a village of 900 people, and it was very much off the back of hard work by the likes of Mike Hughes, Spider, very good friend of mine, Edgar Jones, and the rest of the board, plus the community. I mean, it was then very much a voluntary participation by the people who put the game on, whether they did the tea stall, whether they cleaned the changing rooms, whether they worked on the turnstile, stewarding, etc., etc. So this gave them the ability to perhaps take the heat off them, but they could still try to have a competitive team. So the name was changed, and probably the first 7 games after that were a lesson of football's a very tough game. We had 7 draws, followed by the 8th game, which was a good 10-0 stuffing by Barry Town. So that's how we started our baptism by fire.
Well, to fast forward a little bit, you're the new Saints now. That's a brilliant name too. To be honest with you, I love that name. It's really synonymous with it seems like it's great for what you stand for and really epitomizes the nature of the club. Can you give us some of the thought process that went into that sort of rebranding, if you like?
It is more relevant than what a lot of people realise. I mean, obviously, Llans Sant Ffraid means the Valley of Saint Ffraid, which is a famous saint from mid Wales. During our journey, we merged with Oswestry Town, Saint Oswald. So again, when we bring the two clubs together, you're never going to make everybody happy. You probably make everybody unhappy, because in all mergers, one club thinks that they were better than the other, and the other one thinks they're better than them, and never the two shall twain. So when BT took our Total Network Solutions over in 2005, some thought process went into how do we try to make Oswestry Town relevant and Llans Sant Ffraid relevant, and try to unite them under one banner. Hence the name, The New Saints, and of the two respective locations, albeit they're only 7 miles apart. There is a lot of rivalry between the two communities. So trying to harmonise a football club and two rival sets of supporters under one banner has been a big challenge, and will continue to be a challenge, because there's always the legacy of the die-hard one or the die-hard other part. But when my business originally got involved, and when since it's been about business, about a passion that I have. It's about the fact that we are successful, and that we've been able to produce a football club which now turns over probably around £2 million from its activities. It's got local community programs, it's got ladies, it's got girls, it's got academy, it's got and we like to think that we are a good example of what a football club can achieve. When you consider we started playing in a village and have ended up in the local town, where today it generates its own income, it generates players, it puts a lot back into the community. We run a charity, and still deliver a great amount of success on the pitch, which, as you said before, is a little bit unrememberable how many trophies we have won in that time, and hold the world record for the longest running wins in a row at a senior level.
With TNS, obviously the New Saints, Total Network Solutions, was keeping the acronym part of that decision-making process, or was that just fit in that way?
It seemed to just fit, because obviously we took it to fans, and it was, I can't remember who particularly it was that came up with that. It got shortlisted down to two New Saints, the New Saints, and we thought, well, if people want to try to take the letters of TNS and continue it into the future, it was far enough away from telecoms not to have any confusion to BT.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting approach, and it's really interesting, the challenge, bringing together the two communities as well. I think you do a good job. It's a tough task, and I wanted to ask about the takeover a little bit in 2005. Why was the timing right? Why did it feel like that was the right moment for the takeover to happen?
Well, a lot of things off the pitch really dictated to what we had to do. Wales, rightly so, introduced UEFA licensing, and there was a 10-year implementation to that program, starting back in probably late to mid 90s, where all grounds had to pass certain criteria. The pitch we had in Llans Sant Ffraid, albeit we could play great football there, was never able to be developed. One, it was a council asset; it was a school playing field. There was not enough room to put stands and all the things that you would need to do to have a pitch that could play in the Welsh Premier. So effectively, we would have been relegated even if we'd have won the league. So we had to find a new ground. If you know the territory of Mid Wales, flat fields in Mid Wales aren't the easiest things to come across. So it was nigh on impossible to find a suitable location in the village. Oswestry had obviously lost its football in around the mid 80s and had re-emerged in the around 2000 and had re-emerged back into the Welsh Premier, and they run into financial difficulties. And obviously my business ran out of Oswestry, and we were sympathetic to that, and we didn't want the town to lose its name in football. So I agreed to pay off all its bills, which I did. Wow. So with a view that we merged. And that, I mean, obviously they had a pitch which was developable, albeit it's slightly out of town at Park Hall. And Llanson Fried had a need to stay at the top of the Welsh pyramid. So by merging the two clubs, we were able to continue that dream. And what we see is that it enabled football to continue and save the name of Oswestry Town, because if it goes bust, technically you can't reform and use that name again as an entity after that situation. So, and I can't remember now exactly how much debts they got, but it wasn't a small debt, but it wasn't so huge that it was insurmountable. So it was, in lieu of anybody locally within the town to pick up that debt, which, I mean, it did run to tens of thousands. It wasn't a few hundred quid. We're talking a few tens of thousands, probably 30 or 40,000, which all those debts needed to be paid off, and they promptly were. So the name was preserved, and we also preserved the playing infrastructure at Park Hall, so which has been now developed into the ground we have today.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, Mike. I think just moving on from the journey that you've had, with, the takeover and all the rest of it, through to kind of, again, fast forwarding a little bit into where we are now. Can you talk us through a little bit about the impact of European football on the club? How lucrative that is, the importance it plays in the club building toward the future, but also, I guess, some of the challenges that also creates, the infrastructure that you need to be able to compete at that level. I know you've just touched on it a little bit there with the Welsh League itself, but Europe has even greater standards still, right? So I guess the benefits, the drawbacks, the whole piece around Europe and the focus on it, I guess.
Financially, I mean, I think let's put it in the right order. Any football club wants to try and compete at the very, very top of the game.
Absolutely.
And and the very top of the game is the UEFA Champions League, followed by the Europa League, by the Europa Conference, and then every other 55 countries that make up UEFA, they all have their pyramid system. So if you compete in a territory, your pinnacle is your country's championship, which then enables you to test your skills against the best in Europe. And if you finish in the other places, there are other competitions like the Europa and the Europa Conference to test your skills again against the best of the rest. So as in a competitive format, that is the dream. And as Llanson Fried and obviously Oswestry Town have always had dreams to be at the top of their leagues, we have gone through those pyramid systems. They want to sustain it and then go after the bigger prizes of going after Europe. Now, there is funding that flows from Europe, and I think outside probably 5 leagues within Europe, that is the funding that sets up the structures for every national league. When you take England, Germany, Italy, Spain, they obviously have massive funding coming from their own associations, just based on the size of those countries and their history. So Europe is an important funding stream, but the driver for the club is not the funding that comes from it. It's the success it brings to the league and indirectly then brings to that country. And people say, but we are a Welsh club. Lansett Fried is a Welsh village. Oswestry helped form the Football Association of Wales and was one of the founding participants back in 1870 something or 1880 something. So Oswestry played a very big part in Welsh football. I'm Welsh, very proud to be Welsh, and I'm very proud that we are the pinnacle of Welsh football within our own nation, albeit we've had to lend a little bit of England to play our games on. And even if we go back to the very first international, but when England played Wales, 9 Oswestry Town players played for Wales.
An incredible number. And, we don't really get to give UEFA any flowers on this podcast too often. And from football fans generally don't get to give UEFA any credit. But you mentioned the Conference League there, Mike. How much has that allowed clubs like yourself, or sort of boosted the avenues for clubs like yourselves to get to the coveted group stage, which is really a gold mine for yourselves and for other clubs from sort of smaller domestic leagues?
It is. I mean, in a purist way, I do believe the Champions League should be 4 champions, and it should be 1 champion per country play in the Champions League. But okay, I think that probably if you, as you rightly say, a lot of the smaller countries see it as their holy grail to be actually in existence. So they trade off qualifiers to get in there for Uvalu to get a certain amount of finance. So it is important. I think that the fact that historically there was the Champions League and there was the Europa League and then there was the Intertoto Cup or the other European competition, which really it cost more money to be in. But I think that they were very, very forward thinking how to get this tiered way for more of the smaller countries, better clubs to participate longer in the cycle of the European competitions during the course of the year. So your chance to be in the Champions League was still there by a qualifying system. But if you dropped out after round 1 of the qualifiers, you jettisoned in to play a qualifier in the Europa. And then when you lost that, you have a chance to play a qualifier in the conference, the Europa Conference. So there's now the big prize for a smaller country is to win the first round of the qualifying round of the Champions League, because you only get 2 more bites of the cherry to appear in a group stage. The other clever thinking by Europa was to make the conference financially viable, just like the Europa League is, where you also, if you are successful to get into there, you're going to then get your chance to play teams that are significant. You obviously have had the likes of West Ham in there and other English Premier clubs and established large German clubs, Spanish clubs, etc., etc. So it's not as though the competition is just left to be minor countries competition where nobody takes any interest in it. So they've used, I think a lot of good thought has gone into it. I'm a big believer that the good of the game should be that everyone has a chance to compete. That's why closed off leagues and European leagues made up with just English Premier teams and a scattering of Spanish and German doesn't really appeal. I think long term that would kill the golden goose, because the dream of going to the ball, called the Cinderella going to the ball, should be able to start with any club starting at the bottom of any pyramid system. They should be able to pick their wits, use that challenge, and find a promotional scheme to get themselves there.
Absolutely, Mike. Completely agree with what you're saying. And I think just to stick on the theme of Europe, is there buy-in from the local community around those European games? Does it give you an extra commercial boost? Are you able to sell more sponsorship when you're having that progress through European competition? Do you see that correlation?
We do. The competition is always taken by. We always have a sellout ground for any of those competitions during the qualifiers. I think it becomes appealing for the fans who are perhaps one every 4 or 5 games they turn up. They all turn up for that game. It appeals to the British public who are interested in that competition, who perhaps are there as a neutral. It gives them access to a competition. We also see a lot of our sponsors are very keen to be shirt representing or pitch side representing, helpful to during those competitions. Many of our sponsors have got a great interest in football, so being able to gain access to the draw in Geneva, we make part of their sponsorship package, come as our guests to the as part of the limited people that can go to the draw.
That's amazing. What a great package.
It's using those pieces of the jigsaw to benefit the club. And, I say we've grown the business of what was probably a hobby back in late to mid-90s at Lansdowne Fried or even Oswestry Town, there to a business today which is generating around £2 million. So that's how far the game has gone under our stewardship, and that's again, I think the rub-off for many of our competing clubs is that they've dragged themselves up as well. The competition that we play in the league today, there's no easy games. Where 20 years ago there would be some very easy games. As you can see, look at Barry Town's records, look at our early records. Teams would regularly be beaten by a country mile. And the standard of teams would vary during the season. So perhaps some teams set out first 10 games. If they hadn't done so well, they cut the budget, and then all of a sudden the quality of the game perhaps your competitor had would be easier, or vice versa. So it wasn't, I don't think, a good format for the competition within the game, where today, as much as it doesn't appease the spectators in terms of the choice of the games to go to, and again, myself, I'd love to see a bigger league. The funding that's available, by having the way we've got the format, but it splits at 22 games, there's a relegation conference and a champions conference. It means that there's something on all those games, because even in the bottom conference, the top club can still have a playoff place for the third place in the league. And so there's something to play for. So each rubber has always got a competitive edge, right down to the fact you don't want to be relegated. So the standard of football across the whole of the league has dramatically improved, where I think today, if you go down to club near enough the bottom of the league, they are all of a standard that could have competed in the league 20 years ago.
Great to hear how the league has grown. And actually, I should give a shout out to one of my old local teams. I only played for them Sunday League level, but Landrin Wells. We used to get beaten by a country mile twice a year at TNS, but it was a great trip. You have brilliant facilities, so yeah, I should give a shout out. And it was always good to visit you guys and take a 10-0 drubbing. But I did want to give you a chance to give you a platform as well to sort of speak about the Welsh Domestic League, and offer you the opportunity to say what you think can be done to promote the game further and to elevate the league's stature as well, especially with all eyes on Welsh football at the moment, with the guys at Wrexham. Obviously global eyes on Wrexham at the moment and on Welsh football in general.
Yeah, well, I think that there's the game has come on a long way in Wales. A lot of today it's a lot more professional than it's ever been before. I'd like to think I helped play my part in that. I mean, I dedicated a bit of my time voluntarily to represent the league about 15, 16 years ago. It was one where in those days it was very amateurish, with very little structure and very little thought given to it. We won something called the Premier Cup we beat Cardiff City in the semi-final and then beat Newport County in the final. And I won't name the fella's name, but he was one of the 27 councillors. He says, well done, Mike, well done. Where is it off to from here? Play in England? It was as though there was no passion to build their own pyramid structure that was of the stature of a small nation's pyramid system. And it was perhaps beyond their comprehension of how to do it. So time has rumbled on and things have improved. We have got structure. I think we're striving. We have got limited funds as a nation for football. But I do think that the FAW have still got work to do. Obviously, it was very encouraging that Noel has picked up the reins and came in with fresh ideas. I think it's down to him to now get his vision sorted. But changing things and structures for the sake of changing structures, I've always been against. But it needs to be backed with a business plan, and it needs to be backed with some money. And in the terms of football, the money they need is insignificant compared to what is being spent around the world on other pyramid systems. So not an easy job, but I think that there is a possibility that they could, I think, find a television deal that keeps the Welsh National TV organisation happy, but perhaps keep it to the boundaries of Wales, which is a Welsh-speaking channel, and then find a larger or more international mechanism to take the game to England and beyond. Because, again, as you rightly said, there's a growing appetite for football in America. There's been, obviously, the Wrexham effect on the American population, and the FAW need to try and enhance that and grab on the shirt tails of that and sort of take some of that interest in Wales and to try to apply it to the whole of the league. And ultimately, it's one where to try and bridge that financial gap so that teams want to strive to play in Wales as much as they want to strive to play in England.
Well, Mike, I think that's probably the perfect position to leave this conversation at. We've run out of time. I think we've gone slightly over actually, but I genuinely could sit and listen to you talk about football and TNS and Welsh football all day. But without a doubt, listening to your story and hearing how you've helped to, play your part in shaping what is Welsh football today, and certainly the success story that TNS is, not just as a Welsh club, but as a British club, I think it's important to say, has been fascinating to hear about. So incredibly grateful for your time, Mike.
Be great to catch up again in a year or 2 years down the line to hear how you further evolved, because I think progress is, from listening to you speak, I think progress is on the horizon, even more progress. And incredibly grateful for your time.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to re-stress that myself, my family, the club, we're here for the long term. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. Our ambition is to continue to lift the bar, and we want everyone else to follow us and try and go beyond that bar. And if we're the ones who can't keep up, well, great. We'll know we've done our job for Wales.
That's a great way to leave it, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.